Hi, I'm Lisa Bradshaw. Thanks for joining the show. Last February, I had some guests on the show that were involved in the TEDx Wenatchee talk that was held at Wenatchee Valley College. The talk lasted all throughout the day, that day in February, and I was very honored to be invited to be a speaker there. I think it stretched me and made me a better speaker and helped me kind of hone the focus of my own message. One of the benefits of participating in the TEDx Day was also getting to hear the stories of other people and getting to know more about the work that's being done in our valley and the surrounding areas. So today I've wanted to have Isabel on my show for quite some time. It's winter break, so the travel time aligned for her, and I'm just so grateful to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you were one of the TEDx presenters, and I know it's pretty nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of preparation.
Yeah. Yeah, it was draining a little bit, but I made it work.
Yes,
so.
you did a great job.
Yeah, thank you.
So what was it about your story? We just want to kind of illustrate to the audience what your talk was about, but also what brought you to the importance of that talk. So first of all, you really wanted to help bring awareness to suicide in teenagers through a high school program. We'll get to your program later, but let's talk about what was happening in your own life.
So a few events led up to what had actually happened, and so first off, I really dreaded my home life. I didn't like my stepdad, didn't really appreciate my mom or anything. So I really tried to avoid being home because I just absolutely hated my life for some reason.
And that's relatable. I think there's a lot of teenagers that get to a point when they just don't feel like they can relate to their parents, or if everything isn't just so, and you don't necessarily know how to fix it or communicate that.
Yeah. I've witnessed that with a lot of people that I know that are younger.
It happens with adults too.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't like their home either, but it's good that now you can recognize that. So you were going through this hard time with your mom and stepdad. What were you doing to avoid being home? Where were you hanging out? What were you doing?
So I ran away. I ran away for about 2 weeks, and I wasn't necessarily hanging out with the good crowd. Wasn't my typical friends that I would hang out with. So I was drinking and partying a lot, which I think had a big part in.
And how old were you? What grade were you in at this time?
I was 16 going into my junior year.
Okay.
This was about 2016 in July, end of July.
I think a lot of kids think about running away. What was it that actually, you don't have to tell me the circumstance that actually pushed you to actually do it, but it takes a lot to follow through on running away.
Yes, it does, and I don't recommend it because it is super hard.
It's probably scary too.
It was, but I also had a friend with me the whole time, so it was kind of like we were going through the same stuff, so we were able to relate easily. Mm-hmm. But her parents kind of knew where she was and stuff like that, and I felt very trapped, let's put it that way. My home life felt super overwhelming and trapped, where I wasn't able to have the freedom as much as my friends did, or that's how I felt anyway. But I could have been completely wrong. Every parent parents differently. So obviously I just felt like I wasn't getting as much as what my friends were getting. So you
ran away.
I ran away.
And you were gone for 2 weeks, and you weren't exactly were you going to school? Were you doing?
So it was summertime.
Okay, that's right.
It was at the end of July, and I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. I actually lost my job. I lost my best friend, and I was also kind of dealing with a breakup, but my life was just falling apart.
And it didn't get any better by running away?
No.
So what made you go back after the 2 weeks? How did that happen?
they drugged me back. They were saying that like I couldn't leave. Yeah, and so
They.
my parents.
Okay.
They pretty much had me on lockdown. So they were constantly like watching what I was doing, where I was at. I like had to be under adult supervision all the time, which
was the opposite of what you were going for.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I felt even more trapped, and so I guess how I was trying to escape was, which led into my suicide attempt. So the first time I actually took a lot of naproxen, and then the second, so I was transported to the hospital then, and my parents actually had no idea that that was going on.
How did you get help?
I messaged my friend that I was hanging out with, and she said that she called an ambulance and my parents were sleeping, and so I left, and then I don't really remember how they got contacted, but they got contacted, and I was being transported to the hospital. And then there I was connected with like a social worker, and they said she's good to go. Don't see any issues as to why she needs to be like in the hospital or whatever.
So then you had a second attempt. How soon after that?
A day.
Okay, so you definitely, one of the things that I've read about people who attempt suicide is they almost always immediately regret it, or they almost always wish they could change it. And I've read that even about people who jump off bridges and survive it.
Yeah.
And so when you made that sent that message to your friend, that was your call for help.
Pretty much.
But you didn't get the help you needed, and then you got, the response team came to save you, but you didn't get the help from the hospital, so you went ahead and tried yet again.
Yeah.
And what happened that time?
So that time, same thing, got transported to the hospital. Social worker came, and she had actually, I think, talked to my parents, and was wondering what their opinion on the situation was, because it was obvious that I needed some type of help since I literally attempted within like a 72-hour span. So then I was transported, like I stayed the night at the hospital and then was transported to an inpatient facility.
And did you feel like you started to get the help you needed then?
I was scared. Because you think, like, the thoughts going through my mind when I was being transported, because they have you handcuffed to the bed the whole way there. And living in, like, a rural area, it's pretty far. Like, it's a long drive. So the closest place that I went was Yakima. So I was at the Brewster Hospital and got transported to Yakima in an ambulance, like, handcuffed to a bed because you're at risk. And I was scared. I was like, really
Were you scared for your safety? Were you scared for what would happen next? Were you just overwhelmed in the moment?
I was scared with what was going to happen. I was like, what? Like, where am I going? Like, what is this place going to be like? Because in the movies, like a psych ward, it looks really scary.
And was it once you arrived?
I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what the plan was. But after being there for a few days, I was like, okay, this is good for me. Like,
You were getting the help you needed.
Yeah. I would have lived there if I could.
Were you open to the help from the beginning? Were you resisting it at all? What was kind of the turning point for you?
I think I was scared, so I was just quiet.
Just observing.
Yeah. I think it also really helped. Not very many people were there, surprisingly. And like a lot of the people that work there are in school. So they were going to school like to be a social worker or stuff like that. So it was really easy to relate to them as well. And they were really wanting to help you. Yeah. And the counselor that I had there was amazing. Like, I have never had a counselor as amazing as the guy that I had there. yeah, just the overall help was really beneficial to my mental health in general.
Well, I want to bring your mom on for the second segment. She came to support you for the show today, and then we decided maybe it'd be a good idea for her to join and kind of share from her perspective. So we'll take a break and come back with your mom, and she can probably fill in some of the gaps from a parental point of view.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to the work you've done to try and help other teenagers like yourself. Thanks so much. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, we're back. I'm Lisa Bradshaw. Thanks for joining the show. We've been talking with Isabel Salas. She is someone who was a co-presenter at the TEDx Wenatchee event last February. She shared her story about attempted suicide and the work she did in her community to try and help teenagers like herself get the help they need so it doesn't get to that point. She survived, obviously, and she's here to share her story. We talked in detail about the struggles she went through, and now we have her mom, Carmi, here to talk about the mother's side of this story. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I know you didn't plan to be on this segment, so thanks for, I think it's a good idea for our viewers to know the parent side of things. So
Yeah,
thanks for
no,
being here.
of course, yeah.
So you were off camera listening to Isabel share a bit about what led up to her suicide attempts, and including running away. And that must have been very difficult for you as her mom when she ran away. It was gone a whole 2 weeks. Can we talk a little bit about your side of things and how it led up to her running away, and just how you navigated those couple of weeks to get her the help she needed?
Yeah, so from what I recall and from my perspective is that Isabel did kind of say that she felt like she was depressed. And I constantly was reassuring her that no, she's not depressed, that she's functioning, she has good grades, she's going to school, she has a really good friend group. So I encouraged that. And then, and I guess it was kind of in denial because my mom is bipolar, and so I kind of always wanted to like do the opposite and like not be in that category. And so I kind of was like trying to press her to be like, no, you're good, you know? So
This isn't what depression looks like.
Yeah, this is not
You're
what
high
depression.
functioning.
Yeah, totally capable of doing life, and life is tough. You know, we all have our stories and stuff. So I was like, well, you're doing it fine. But in her perspective now, looking back, it seemed that she wasn't, and so I was really in denial. And so then she did leave, and she was of age to drive. And I got a phone call one day. I was at an event, and I got a phone call from a police officer telling me that she was speeding, and then she was passing in a no passing zone. And so that's what flags went off for me as a parent. And so that's when we noticed that she was not around, and that she had left. And then...
So that's how you found out she wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't realize she'd left home, run away yet. Okay.
No, and that she was even making some choices that weren't good for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
That was new.
Yeah. And so I told her that if she doesn't come home, that I will be putting a stolen car alert out, and that she needs to come home. So then she came home. And I think with me being that hard parent of trying to discipline, kind of set her and triggered her a little over the edge instead of like, you know, being supportive and understanding. And so I think that's what led up to the first attempt.
So when you're looking back at this, and it sounds to me like you've taken some responsibility in terms of like you could have maybe, when you were saying how every parent parents differently, and that she was just, your mom was trying to enforce rules and things. What advice would you give to parents whose child is telling them how your daughter was feeling? Is there something you would have done differently? Is there advice you'd give to parents? What do you see?
Yeah,
your
I would
role in that?
definitely encourage parents to listen and hear what their child is saying, especially because they should know themselves well enough to know that they need some help, or, you know, and I guess it was my job to like maybe seek out some advice and guidance with what my kid was telling me for that, instead of denying it or telling her she's good, you know. I mean, I feel like I did a good job of like talking with her and stuff, but like Isabel had stated, that she felt trapped, and that makes sense, you know, looking back on it. Like, you know, we did have rules and we did have expectations of her, and I think that maybe some of that was a little bit overkill in a sense. But I think now, like Isabel, we have younger kids, and Isabel's like, oh my gosh, like, you didn't look at it that way when I was that age.
Yeah,
I think that's true no matter what. When
Yeah.
when as the kids come up, I have an only child, but I know I have friends who they get a little more laxed and laxed
Yeah.
as each child goes along.
Well, they live and they learn, pretty much.
Right. Well, and that's good. You would want your siblings to have it a little easier than you were feeling like you were having it.
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah.
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 And so then when the first suicide attempt happened, I can't even imagine what that must have been like for you to get that news and navigate that part of Isabel's story. But it's also huge part of your life. What was that like for you? What was your instinctive reaction to how do you even go about that?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say, but the first time I thought it was a joke. I didn't take it seriously at all. I didn't even blink at it. I was like, I'm not even going to go in and talk to her when she was with the ambulance. I was like, you know, she can...
You thought she was just doing it for attention?
Oh, yeah. I thought it was all about attention. And I was like, I'm not going to energize it and let her feed off of it and let her see that I'm going to show up in this type of environment or this type of crisis. Like, so...
And what was that like for you? What did you said you weren't even sure what happened next after that message to your friend. Did you have an expectation of how your mom would respond to it?
I don't think so. I think I was just more like, my main thing was I don't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On the planet or in the hospital?
More like in general.
Yeah.
Like I just...
You wanted out.
Yeah.
Okay. So then she's released from the hospital. Everyone thinks she's good to go, and then it happens again.
Mm-hmm.
And was that the trigger for you?
Yeah, it was.
Mhm.
I was in battle mode for my kid.
And what does battle mode look like for you?
Driving to the hospital, which is like 45 minutes away, and sitting there demanding services and help because my capacity level was met, and so I didn't know and what to do. So
Right, meaning like you didn't have the skill set to do the next step of this.
Mm-mm.
You needed help. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it was shown. She came home and we just went on as normal, and that just proved to me, like, I don't know what to do. You know, I don't know how to make this change or this different. And so I sat at the hospital with my boyfriend, or what she would consider her stepdad, for like 8 hours waiting for the behavioral health center to show up and do an evaluation. And in that 8 hours, him and I sat through and wrote down all of the things that we could think of that had given us true insight that there was something bigger than what we can help her with. And so
that's an amazing turnaround in just a couple of days for you to go from, this is all just for attention to, okay, now this is serious. And then to retrace your steps and her steps, that was probably pretty overwhelming.
it was, but I was determined.
Mhm.
You know, I felt like I neglected seeing it for what it was, and I knew the importance of that her life meant more to me than just denying and having a stigma or a label because of my mom, you know, and my history. So, yeah, and so then I get to see that she's this amazing, beautiful, shining star that wants to make an impact on this world in this light, and I'm happy that I can say that she is here to do that.
So you've both done a lot of mending of your relationship and your life.
Yeah. People ask me all the time about the situation, about like how I look at my parents now, and I'm just like, I'm closer than ever with them. Like, and people ask me like, are you mad at them for sending you to like an inpatient facility? Or I'm just like, no. It gave me a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It really just like opened up my eyes and was like, I know what I need to do. It was really like, I I need to speak about this for people who aren't going to talk.
You have a really great voice for it as well. We're friends on Facebook, and you're very transparent there. You'll share how you're feeling, and I'm pretty transparent on there as well. And some people think that that's maybe oversharing sometimes,
Yeah.
but I believe in the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
And I've always been willing to share my story if it helps someone else tell their own. And I know you can relate to that. But sometimes when I see, I can tell you're frustrated or you're going through something, I'm thinking, oh, I hope she's okay. And I feel like then you come back and you say something a few days later, and I realize you are okay, that you're just voicing those bumps in the road that you go through, that we all go through.
Yeah.
And clearly you've got some skills in place now to cope with that and the support of your family. And so it's a whole new world for you.
Yeah.
A whole new way to look at the troubles
Yeah.
that we go through.
I actually was going through a lot. So I was a freshman at Eastern Washington University last year, and I decided to take a break. One of the mentally exhausting school years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And mentally, this is the healthiest I have ever been. I've been super happy, super, like, normally this time of year, I would be a wreck. I would just be a wreck. And I'm content and happy with where I'm at in my life.
Good. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your side of things and just how it affected you personally and also how you were able to get the help that Isabel needed. So let's take a break, and when we come back, let's talk about the work you've done to help other teenagers. Thanks again.
Thank you, Lisa.
Isabel, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about H.O.P.E.S. It is helping our peers in suicide. You've helped organize this group of peers who support other peers who are going through a hard time.
Yeah. So, after, it was actually really recent after my attempt, I started this peer-to-peer suicide prevention group, and they are trained to help any of their friends or anybody that, like, happened to be in a crisis, and try to direct them to the proper resources.
So they aren't necessarily counselors, but they're trained about how to get you navigated to the right people.
Yeah.
To get the support that you need, which is what you ultimately needed to help save your life. Okay.
Yeah.
For more information about H.O.P.E.S, you can visit my website. It's lisa-bradshaw.com, and fill out the contact form and we can get you more information. You can also search for Isabel Salas, Salas,
Yes.
TEDx talk, and she talks in detail about the program. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and your mom
thank
doing
you.
it too.
Yeah.
And thanks for making the time during your winter break.
Yeah.
Again, you can visit lisa-bradshaw. Why can't I say my own name? lisa-bradshaw.com. Fill out the contact form to reach out to Isabel. I just didn't want to give your personal information, so we'll have them come through my website. And you can find out more information about H.O.P.E.S. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.